all your school rugby, all in one place. This is Next Gen 15.
Hello and welcome to episode 10. We're into double figures now of the Next Gen 15 podcast with me, Angus Savage and Dan Richards. You can catch us on Acast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can watch us on YouTube. And you can get in touch with us on pretty much every platform on @NextGen15. Dan, a massive weekend. It feels like ages since we've sort of had a chat where there's been actual rugby because we've had that sort of 2-week half term, but what a weekend.
I mean, back with a bang, wasn't it? I mean, we'll talk about some incredibly standout results. One that probably stands out more than others that we'll spend a decent amount of time talking about, but plenty of rugby to talk about, plenty of stories as well. A bit of good news from Academy's front and a bit of a sad individual story that I know you're going to shine a light on. But yeah, so nice to have rugby back, and always interesting when it's in stormy conditions like that again, which will have played a part in why we got some incredible results. But look in the books, and it's it was a great day for schoolboy rugby.
Certainly was, and you're right. Certainly mixed things up in terms of the results that we saw coming through. But as you say, we start on a slightly very dark note, to be honest, which is the news that Levi Davis is missing. Levi was a Denstone College pupil, played England under 18s and 20s. He was part of the Tigers Academy. Ended up playing for Bath. He's now been playing for Worthing College, and I guess known to a slightly different audience, having participated in the X Factor alongside Ben Foden and Tom Evans. He was last seen 29th of October at the Old Irish Pub in Barcelona. There's a big appeal to just get any information to the people that are worrying about him. There's an email address that's been set up, so that is findlevidavis@gmail.com, and I'll put a link to that on all the various outlets that we put this podcast out on. If anyone has heard anything or knows of anything, please get in touch. There's a lot of people worrying about him, his family first and foremost. It's a really downbeat note to start on. I guess there's no point us dwelling on it too much. We just got to hope that it's good news and not the worst.
Yeah, I think it's just reiterating thoughts and prayers with his friends and family. And there's a huge amount of, probably lots of people seen on the social media. If anyone knows anything, please just come forward. Everyone just wants Levi to be found safe and well. So yeah, a really sad story about an incredibly talented and kind young man. So yeah, hopefully found soon.
Yeah, wishing all the best to Levi and hoping he's okay. On the positive side, in terms of news, RFU Midlands Academy, there is something that's been put in place to help out all those kids that were sort of part of the development pathway at Worcester Warriors and Wasps. It's basically going to mirror what's already been done in Yorkshire after Leeds Carnegie's tethering to that academy was lost. The RFU are going to kind of take control, but a really positive step. I mean, you and I have talked loads about really one of the most important things is finding some way of being able to make sure that these young guys don't miss out on the opportunity to be seen, and this should hopefully mean that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and kind of, our crystal ball, this was kind of our best guess, wasn't it? Once both clubs collapsed, that something like this will get put together. What seems really good, said, most importantly, I think they're still going to play as separate entities in the Academies League.
I think it's going to be Midlands West and Midlands Central,
and I think they actually play each other first up. So it's...
that'd be spicy.
Yeah, but so what's is obviously all these boys getting their shop window, which for those guys who we talked about, do we give some schools get more coverage than other, and the Academies League is one way that other guys get that coverage, but also academy coach with jobs. We've seen they have been staffed overwhelmingly with existing staff. That doesn't mean some people haven't tragically lost their income at a really tough time, but lots of people have been reinstated, if you want, in a way under this new guise. And I know that, PRL and the RFU are working for a whole new way forward around academies, not just in that region, but what the future will look like. So that'll be interesting. So again, nice to have a good news story. We had to start we had some really bad news around those two clubs imploding, and it's been nice to see. It seems as though actually, contrary, if you want, to what I predicted, that more of the academy boys have found it easier to find a home than actually some of the top earners, mainly maybe because of salary cap and stuff like that. And that's horrible. But in terms of the part of the game we look at, it seems, or we focus on, it seems as though most of those kind of 18 to 21-year-olds on those have actually, be it with Saracens, Harlequins. I've not heard of people at Bath. There's people all over. I know. Given, I think Ollie Hartley recently left Whitgift, was in the Watts Academy, has just linked up with Saracens, I believe. And there's lots of stories like that. So that's really good as well, that people's careers haven't been lost. They're still getting that opportunity. So yeah, a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, which has been.
It's really good news. And it's kind of, that stuff links into what one of our fears was when it was all falling apart, which was that, to put a random age on it, a 24 to 34-year-old Premiership player, a year, 9 months without playing is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. You'd rather be playing, but it's not absolute carnage. As a young player, a year without playing is a year of development just completely lost, and you're suddenly getting overtaken by those younger. So it's so great to see those young guys who are already pros getting taken up by lots of clubs. But it's also amazing news to see that the RFU have stepped in. And I think the bit that a lot of people will maybe lose in this is that the RFU and Premiership Rugby are actually working together on this, as they do on all Premiership academies. There's a lot of sort of RFU versus Premiership chat that you hear across things, partly because of the way things are as you go up the ladder. But actually, on something like this, they're working together. And I guess we've got to be fair to people when they do bang their heads together and start working well. We've got to shout it out. But it's really awesome. And training starts next week. It's so quick. It's awesome.
So barely any time lost for those boys, which is fantastic. Great.
And just to sort of finish up on that, just in case anyone needs any questions answered, in their press release, the RFU are very open about giving a contact email address. So just to give you that contact email address, Eliza Ullersperger, ULLERSPERGER @rfu.com is the person to contact for any inquiry. So if you feel like you've been sort of missed out, and that not just on a selection basis, but because it's just an admin error or whatever, get in touch with them and they will sort it out. And I know everyone is very keen to make everything work. The other bit of news, this actually came out last week, but we kind of ran out of time to talk about it, and I forgot to put it down in our notes, is that live broadcasts to Sky New Zealand have been stopped in New Zealand of schoolboy rugby after schools headmasters stepped in. Schoolboy rugby, particularly in New Zealand and South Africa, is a massive product, and I think that's probably the right word. It's a product, and it's broadcast on live TV. I mean, the equivalent of a Sky or BT Sports here in the UK, they're broadcasting those games, and they are being broadcast as professional rugby matches in effect. And I think schools have got a bit uncomfortable with that. We've here in the UK, we've seen it occasionally that schools at least want reassurance on the way that a broadcast is going to be dealt with. Sometimes we get that wrong, sometimes we get it right. But I think what the fear is always is that you will get this, what seems to have happened in New Zealand is this very professional critiquing of what's going on, and actually putting pressure and detailed analysis by people who aren't connected to the players on those players. And that, I think, it's a bit of guesswork, but I think that probably is what the issue is in large part. You'll know more than me just through having been a school coach, and you'll be aware of some of those fears that exist on this side of the pond as well. It's certainly a kind of live issue.
Yeah, it is, and I guess the fact that I'm involved with this, I'm not a next gen employee, but kind of shows. I feel as though showing the game is a positive thing. However, and I know it's something we've talked about in private, so we can kind of impressly share our thoughts. Because I know it is complex. It's more complex than often a lot of players or parents think. So overwhelmingly, my experience, and this one has been that, and I think we talk about this, and I think you agree, is that people want, the players get excited about live stream games. The audience, the parents get excited about it. Community gets excited about it, and actually, we do know it can help with pathways and stuff like that anecdotally, okay, because it means the games are out there. So it does, you do create, and you guys do a great job of not just showing, the top 5 schools. That you do streams across the board, and it does give a bit of a shop window to other people to bolt. And there are examples of that. There is another side to it where, I don't know, early days, I can remember I remember talking with you and Richard around kind of comments on YouTube, and it's like, but then that was quickly removed. Like, that was really simple. Like, but then in a way, you can't always hide from that. There are, in a world of, increased access, I know following, there was an incident in the Sedbergh Wellington game last year. Then, so when I was that led to a player from Sedbergh getting some abuse, for want of a better word. Now that's not okay, and that led me and Noxie to have some conversation involving about, well, should we limit the information about the boys a bit, because we're, as schools will be, as parents listeners will be aware, very protective of information about their pupils. But understandably, when there's a game going out, it's like, well, actually, this is you get a pupil's name, their school, you might get their academy affiliation, and so actually they then become easy to track down if somebody wants to be horrible, which is really tragic. Yeah. On the behalf of the person who being, but I think overwhelmingly, and I think the fact that you guys, and this is, I think it's important for people to know, we basically are associate. We've got to know each other through Schools Rugby, and I'm not on the Next Gen payroll. What makes Next Gen different to a Sky doing it is you're very focused on the schools game. You understand that you've worked really hard. You came in understanding a good level, and you guys understand what schools are about. We talked in that it's about development, it's about values, it's about the all round game. And that's what comes across overwhelmingly in the live streams I listen to. I don't hear comments like, "Oh, we should have taken that pass," or that's naive, or that's because I feel like Next Gen understand that these are young people, that they're kids, that they're learning, and that makes it well different. I've not heard the commentary from New Zealand, but I agree with you. I suspect it was something like that. That isn't what I hear from the coverage from you guys, and if that's why I love being associated with you in this way. So I don't think we're in that place, and I think the fact you guys do it probably highlights the great job that you're doing it and continue to do. And it's sad, and hopefully that Schools Rugby New Zealand can find a different outlet that is more appropriate, that doesn't because we don't want to put the players under pressure. And I don't think what we've got in the UK currently does that. I think it shines a spotlight on a great element of the game. Sorry,
Well, I think, a lot of very kind stuff in there, but I actually think the kind of the salient point in the whole thing is that often media is, in the wider world, media strives for independence and therefore the ability to critique without judgment, in effect. The reality is, when you're covering school sport, yes, you're independent, but it needs to be a collaborative form of independence. You need to work with people to make sure that the message you're putting across is the message that actually helps protect people as much as it does highlight what they're doing. You're not always going to get that right, in the same way that no school gets every decision they make right. But if you work with them, you've got a far better chance. And at the end of the day, if you can do that properly, you give the lads a great opportunity to just have another thing that they enjoy, another aspect to make it real positive for them. So hopefully things improve down in New Zealand and they find something that works appropriately for them. And hopefully no one sort of panics too much across the rest of the world. There is also a little rumour in the background that it might be that they're just haggling for a better broadcast deal. So this could all be a moot point.
Yeah, and I think the key word is collaboration. Having been on, it always felt when that we're working together to highlight the game, as opposed to Next Gen trying to sell the schoolboy game, and that was that was really key. I think that's a really key point you said there, that it felt like a partnership, and that's important. I think, as you continue, to work hard to put a spot on all elements of the game. We've talked about the state school game in the last few weeks. I know you guys are doing more and more to kind of get streams available to those guys and stuff like that. So no, I think it's a very different kettle of fish, and I would urge people not to get, if headmasters, not to get spooked by it if they are being. But yeah,
you never know. Other big news, well, I suppose it's not news as much as fact. We're moving into Schools Cup, what I always call regional final week, technically last 16, but I like to give things a bit of a buzz. Regional final week, 7 out of the 8 games being played this week, and then next week, Finborough against Bedford, which we'll probably cover in more detail next week's pod, because that's such an exciting game for a number of reasons. But we start actually today, Seaford College against Marlborough College, Southwest A. I reckon that's going to be a really, really tight game. Wednesday, we've got 6 games. Cardinal Newman versus the Judd, which is that catch-up game because they were cancelled and they're not cancelled. Winner of that has an almighty challenge of taking on Trinity. Kings Macclesfield against Stockport Grammar in North B. Woodhouse Grove, RGS Newcastle North A. South West B, Sir Thomas Richards against Blundells. I think for many people, the tie of the round, Hampton against Harrow, London and South East B, 2 of the best teams in the country at the moment, going head to head in the cup. I mean, winner of that's got a fair chance of going the whole way, I'd say. Yeah,
I mean, amazing stuff. And just to do a bit of another state school bang the road, great to hear. I think there was at least 3. I think it was Cardinal Newman, Judd, and Tommy's in there. So 3 state schools, getting to that level, it's fantastic. I agree. I think at this stage, probably that Hampton Harrow is the tie of the round. You probably just about, I think, still have Trinity as favourites to retain it, to kind of, if we're talking about, to kind of to do another South London school, to do a back-to-back, and which would be.
Well, there is a thing though, isn't there? You see it happen. I'm trying to think. I mean, this is off the top of my head now, but you've got Whitgift 2010, 2011 back-to-back, Dulwich 12, 13, 14, 3 in a row. Bromsgrove 15, 16, Warwick 17, 18, Whitgift 19, and probably would have been 20.
Yeah.
And then probably. Trinity 21, probably favourites for 22. There's something about going back to back in that competition that I don't know if it's just having a few players that have done it before, it just calms the nerves a little, or if it's just that, this is school rugby, and if you've got a strong group, and they tend to stick together for 2 years in sixth form.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of that. Like, you tend to get, clutches of players. Sometimes in a local area, you'll get, a bit of talent attracts talent. So some guys might move that kind of thought. So all of a sudden, you might find that, have Trinity at the moment got the sort of group that Whitgift might have expected to have had if we were talking about 2015, because people knew, and so they've kind of migrated towards there, which is, you could say the same about Dulwich. Dulwich, during that period of time. I think you're right, though, that it becomes you get over the hump of kind of, people talk about it more in the professional game, don't they? About, you've got to get to these basics, but you kind of need to almost fail. I think if you looked at the journeys of a lot of those schools, you see a lost semi-final or something like that in the kind of couple, in the year or two.
I remember that was particularly strong when Warwick won a couple in a row. And 15s and 18s, they'd hit semi-final after semi-final, or close quarter-final after close quarter-final. And then eventually there's just an explosion of it all happening at both.
Yeah, 100%. So you kind of learn, I think, you get used to prepping for a big game, the nerves around it, the fact, that particularly, people like us will talk about it and what that brings and stuff like that. So I
suppose it sort of normalises it a bit, doesn't it?
And I think, it's just,
which is a shame in a way, because it makes it slightly less special when you're playing in that semi-final, but it probably normalises the feeling. So you go, yes, we're, whoever you might be, we're Warwick, we play in semi-finals, that's what happens.
And it's an interesting one as a coach, because you want to do that, and obviously everyone, from it will be just another week, just another game. It isn't just another week, just another game, and again, so it's interesting. I've always worked with different people and I think do you own the fact it's different? Do you own the fact that it's cup and it's knockout and there's a bit more around it, or do you just try and use your process and go through it that way?
I imagine it's quite a tricky one to work out that, because probably the right answer is, for achieving the result that everyone wants to achieve, is you've got to treat it like another game. But actually, if you do achieve what you want to achieve, you want to have made it out to be as special as possible in the build-up. So it's like, where do you get to? It must be tricky.
And I don't think there's a right answer. And if you sat, guys who are currently coaching and myself, if say you had, even say me and Carl, who obviously worked together on that Wellington side for a few years, I'm pretty emotional, and I'd probably be telling, right, let's play on like the emotion of the occasion. We can use that, we can energize ourselves more, because actually boys are tired. There's coursework deadlines, there's all sorts going on at this time of year. And I don't want to put words, but Carl might lean towards, it's just a game of rugby. We focus on our skill acquisition. We focus on kind of doing what we need to do, and that's the way you get through it. And there isn't the right answer. It'd be interesting, what does, what is being said, what are the, again, we say that Hampton, Harrow, we're saying we think that's the most exciting tires around them, but what are all of those schools, what are respective coaches saying? And almost more importantly, how are the boys seeing it? Because you can say something as a coach and say it's just another week, or we're going to really get, but what actually happens from that leadership group down to the playing group is what matters. So that's the interesting one. And we, how those groups are approaching it, we sort of talk a lot about, games aren't won on Saturdays or Wednesdays, they're won in the kind of 4 or 5 days before it, and what, we're recording now on a Tuesday, what's happened yesterday and today within those schools, and actually what they did on Sunday in recovering, from final whistle on Saturday with
what's the feeling in the camp post final whistle on Saturday?
Will have a huge impact on what happens in those games tomorrow. So, and obviously some schools didn't play. I think Hampton and Harrow have had a long build up. Does that help you? Does that hinder you? Have you overthought about it? Like, there's all sorts of things going on there from a that present different. Are you better to just play and bounce into the game? Some teams, I think Finborough rested some boys. Like, do you rest boys and keep bodies fresh, and actually risk losing a bit of momentum, as we saw? Arguably they've lost, because they lost aggressions, and it's that, have they lost momentum in their season now? I know Wilco would always be, you just play, you keep playing, and you keep your team going. As a coach of a team that's had huge success in cup formats. Again, there isn't a right way to manage this. It's just interesting, and what's happening at schools will be coming at this from such different ways, and that's a really cool part of the challenge, actually, for me.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and Finborough, I think, they've been in touch. So one of their lads, to be fair, has been in touch. Coaches aren't that precious, but one of the lads are. But they have been in touch and say, it was a second team that went up there, and it would have been. But you're right, there, because the ones aren't playing and the twos go up, and they maybe have the result that just in training, they're going to be training together, and then maybe there's that feeling, or maybe everyone's going, brilliant, we're all rested. So it's all like, you never know quite how it's going to be. The one game I've not referred to yet is because I wanted to trail a bit of live streaming for it, which is Oakham against Stowe, which we are live streaming tomorrow afternoon, part of a bit of a bumper session of live streamings. We have Monday night, last night, RGS Worcester against Kings Worcester in the Modus Cup, an absolute
great game,
belter of a game in the rain. And Friday night we've got Merchant Taylors in Northwood hosting Reading Bluecoat as the end of they do a rugby week each year where they get loads of excitement going for age groups all the way through, and they invite loads of guests, sort of prep school teams and stuff, and then it finishes off with that live stream on the Friday night. But Wednesday, 2:30 kickoff, Oakham against Stowe, and I'll tell you what, we've focused in on that sort of London area because there are a lot of, there are certainly 3 potential title contenders, and I'd argue in the Judd a team that could start when they play, just because
that would be 8.
They've been so good against everyone so far. But I'd say outside of that, yeah, you just Seaford College or a Marlborough could go well. Kings Macclesfield having a nice season. Same with Tommies and Blundells, Woodhouse Grove, RGS. But I think Oakham and Stowe are two sides. Oakham have been there and done it before in the past, albeit a long time ago. Stowe won the plate last year. These two, I've been doing my research for this game, and these two met in the semi-finals of the Cup as under 15s. Stowe won that game. They met last year in the Vars final at Rossin Park Sevens. Stowe just won that one. So there's a lot of history for these two groups of players coming together for this one. And I genuinely think whichever one of them emerges from it has got a fair shot at going very, very deep. But the two sides that are playing some serious rugby, I mean, they're
proper game of schoolboy rugby there. And I think probably outside of that London Southeast region, and it isn't just because we're both living down here. It has been the area that's dominated the Cup. Again, take Sedbergh Milford out of the equation. Like a lot of other dominant, and obviously they don't play in the Cup. So the London Southeast region has dominated the Cup overall. But the Midlands would be the next, through Warwick and Bromsgrove primarily recently. So now we've got we seem to have, they've been slightly knocked off. Obviously Stowe, you guys still a bit London Southeast, Buckinghamshire, is it really? But they, towards the top of that.
Saints Academy region. So
yeah, 100%. And I guess you go, again, and I wouldn't claim to know loads about either of these teams, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But to Stowe maybe going with the star power with Pollock and McPartland, and then maybe Oakham, a bit more of a kind of back to those old kind of really kind of cohesive Oakham dates. Having said that, obviously Oakham have had massive star power. I think they had someone playing for Wales, Scotland, and England.
They had Hamish Watson at 7 for Scotland. They had Jack Van Portfleet coming off the bench for England at 9, and they had Sam Costello coming off the bench for Wales at 10. That's not bad. That's a cool weekend for a school. That
we're not set, and I think I've only seen kind of Millfield achieve stuff like that before on a kind of Six Nations or Autumn Nations weekend. So that's so we're not saying Oakham don't produce superstars of the game, but it's maybe at the moment does Stowe have the standout, and you will know more about this having research. They maybe have what you might expect to be your standout, air quoted standout individuals, and what Oakham will bring. I mean, fascinating game, and I think you're right. They will fancy going. All right, Joe, everyone's talking about Harrow, everyone's talking about Hampton, everyone's talking about Trinity. We're pumping up Judd's tyres a little bit. We want to see them play in a big game again against. So but like they're kind of. Yes, we've given a bit of pressure, probably a little bit, not talked about as much as some other schools. So, really exciting game of rugby that.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be awesome. I mean, the games I've dug fairly deep on what they've done in different age groups. It's a bit of a shame because we lost that year to COVID, which kind of takes out quite a lot. But the games have been really tight between them, and I know that neither school has really changed personnel that much through the years. So I'm hoping it's just going to be an absolute belter. Stowe have that advantage in terms of those past results, probably a little bit more hyped. Oakham at home, though, they've been there, done it in the Cup. And I know it's a long, long time ago, but kind of what we were talking about, that sort of historical sense in the school, it's going to be really cool.
And I'm thinking myself, Ian Simpson, who's been there a long time, whilst the boys won't have the memory, there's institutional memory there through, Ian Simpson, a great director of sport. I think maybe might have been a director of before. Again, don't want to talk out of turn. And kind of he's been at Oakham while knows the place inside out and backwards. Done a superb job for a long time. So, and kind of actually a really innovative thinker around the schools game. So. It's an interesting one. I think he will know how to help the rugby coaching staff kind of prepare for these bigger games if there are, coaching staff who've not been involved in the because coaches have to get ready for it. Sometimes it's a whole different environment.
Obviously you've probably got parents that are getting on to you. I'm sure there's all sorts. But that's looking ahead at the next few days. But let's look back at the weekend that was and get our top 5 school teams of the weekend, because what a weekend. I mean, just so many tight games, which we love. I mean, a bit of a byproduct of the weather that in many ways. But still just amazing to see, and some real surprise results. Some other signs of some really top teams against other good opposition, still managing to just keep that momentum going. I'm thinking of a Clifton taking on Sherburn in what
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure, well, I wasn't too far away from there. I was at Bryanston at the same time and it was hammering down. So I'm pretty sure 2 counties over, it probably wasn't too different. And yet
yeah.
Clifton just maintaining that is very impressive. But then you've got these other games. And I guess one team that is going to be an absolute nailed on in our top 5 has got to be Denstone College going
Oh,
up to
mate.
Sedbergh. And well, for anyone that's not seen it, they went up to Sedbergh, unbeaten Sedbergh, and Denstone take the win 17-14 in what were apparently atrocious conditions. Although it has to be said, that's not unusual in Sedbergh. They know a thing or two about playing in the rain, but Denstone College turning up with their brand of outstanding physical, difficult to play against rugby and securing an absolutely outstanding 17-14 victory up in Cumbria. How good is that?
I mean, just incredible. I think it's hard to within our little bubble of schoolboy rugby. It's kind of hard to quantify for within the English schools rugby scene how big a deal it is for a school to go away to Busk and win. So I think we talked a bit at the start. We stopped talking. Winning away is more, and winning away at Sedbergh, and I think we've looked at. I think we're right. Did we find 2016 was the last time?
23rd of November 2016. Yeah.
Yeah. Hang on, is it? And it is the last time a school not called Millfield beat Sedbergh, and that was Kirkham Grammar. So that's how lots of hang on, 6 years ago. Like that's a whole group going through a school. That's a whole kind of generation. Yeah. So just incredible. I'm sure the rain played a factor. We talked in the build about that game. I think I know you've spoken to the coaches and about. I think you were right actually, and that kind of Denstone came with heavy line speed, shut the skill, put those skills under pressure. The weather also putting the skills under pressure, and got on top in an arm wrestle. But just incredible, like to Rupert, the director of rugby there, and to everybody involved in that Denstone victory, like the players and parents. That is a day they will never forget, and just absolute hats off. Hats off for taking on the challenge. Lots of teams, lots of schools. Speak to Seb. They struggle to get teams to go there to get competition because people are too worried about results. They've gone, nah, we'll take that on. And actually, we did see in Denstone a team that was really unlucky not to make a St. Joe's final, and were superb at St. Joe's. And so maybe we underestimated them going into the game, but just incredible and just so great for that group. It doesn't matter almost what that Denstone team do for the rest of the year, through the rest of 15s into 7s. That is a day you can never take that away from that group. And, they'll be getting together post-uni when they're working at dinner parties, talking about that day. And kind of that's what schoolboy rugby's about. It's about memories. I call Wisdom friends at the weekend, and they're friends from school from playing rugby together. And the first thing we talk, we're telling stupid stories about games, and that's what this is a memory, and this is a memory for those boys, and it's incredible. So I think we don't rank these top 5, but I think I'm kind of for me, I'd be happy to say this week kind of Denstone would be my team of the week, like in terms of that's just incredible.
It's an incredible achievement. And do you know what? While we're kind of on it, hats off to Sedbergh as well, who've been the most magnanimous about this. So I can't actually remember who it was or where I saw it, but it was very much official from Sedbergh, just going hats off, well played, did us fair and square, and I really like that. There's a little bit of no one apart from Millfield's beating you in 6 years. I suppose it's easy to be magnanimous, but on the other hand, it's very easy not to be as well. So hats off to Sedbergh but Denstone.
And they managed that bit really well. Like through again, having been involved in kind of block fixtures against them, kind of regard. If you do they know that their boys, their players will learn a lot. You don't you know, that you learn a lot through losing. You know, it's that kind of Eddie Jones cliche. You know, you either win or you learn, and it's that kind of. And I actually,
I've been up there a couple of times for various dinners, and every time the headmaster has Dan Harrison, the former first team coach before Simon Mulholland, has done a speech at the start of the dinner, and every time his speech has said that he's a great believer in losing and what can be learned from it. So I have absolutely no doubt that's what will be being discussed there. But let's look at some of the others, because there are some extraordinary performances and results all around the country this weekend. Another that I want to shout out, Eastbourne College, 2019 against Brighton College. Some debate as to what sort of a side Brighton College put out, but you know what? It really doesn't matter. What matters is that this group of Eastbourne College players who've actually been having a really cracking season, particularly in I think it's the Vars they're in. I've been tracking them along, getting some really good performances and results out there. And much like Denson going to Sedbergh, Eastbourne College hosting Brighton College and getting a victory, that's going to be massive for those guys. That's huge. Really impressive.
Yeah, 100%. And kind of, I don't want to be kind of horrible, but we've just praised Sedbergh how they managed that, and I should clarify, but you can also learn in victory as well as losing. But it's that how Sedbergh managed that defeat, and I've seen a bit of kind of what side was it on social media? No one's got everybody fit this time of year. All right, that was first 15 versus first 15. That's a derby game, and Eastbourne College for the first time in a long while have come out on top, and they deserve. Ollie Torrey, as having worked at RGS Guildford and now run the rugby at Eastbourne College. He's a fantastic coach. Does a great job, kind of pretty quietly at a program that just sort of works really hard for its players and everybody involved in that one. Again, they will have had that's been another day to remember for them, and nothing should be taken away from that. Like Eastbourne College just deserve the credit, and they deserve their place in our top 5.
100%. So that's 2 locks. Denson College and Eastbourne College. I feel like I'm going in alphabetical order or something. Another one that I think we're both agreed on is Skinners. Hosting St John's Leatherhead. They won this fixture last year, so perhaps not surprising that they've done it, but I think every time a state school beats the independent school, it is at least worthy of consideration for the top 5, just because of the things that we see that all blow up on social media when everyone's talking about discrepancies, blah, blah, blah. Actually, because of those reasons, that's why it is so impressive when these sort of results happen. And fair play Skinners, 12-3. For me, that's an outstanding outcome.
And it was it's a great result. St John's in a bit of a maybe transitionary year. New head of rugby, kind of getting used to it. Probably trying to Liam trying to establish his own culture and get stuff right. But that take nothing away. And there's some great. I think John. They probably won't make our top 5 here, but John Fisher's draw with Dulwich. Again, also really and then worthy of mention, because again, that Fisher side that I believe has got a huge amount of talent, kind of starting maybe. We talked about half term maybe being a chance to reset, and hopefully they can take some momentum out of that. But no, Skinners deserve their place. I think this is where we probably both agree. There's kind of on the kind of 4 or 5 maybe teams kind of in the mix here. So I guess
there's a few in the mix.
So RGS Guildford, I guess, winning another derby. We talked about it, built it up, and kind of a great win over Cranley. The Modus Cup win, that's such a big game, bragging rights. So, and maybe you can almost have a kind of derby focus there, can you, if we say that kind of 4 of the 5 are derbies. So RGS Worcester coming out on top against Kings. I think the ones that then worth talking about as well for me would be George Watson's beating Murky up in Scotland. That isn't, Murky are kind of the Sedbergh of Scotland, for those.
Yeah, exactly. I think whether they're on a good year or a bad year, you kind of measure yourself against them, and also a
Yeah,
bad year is a pretty relative term. But
yeah,
they're always the standard that you set yourself against, I would say. And Watson's doing that, especially after what looked like a tricky outing in half term at the Murky Festival.
yeah,
So then immediately bounce back. I know they had a few injuries and stuff, and that was kind of what hurt them a little bit at that. But to bounce back straight away, first game up against your sort of biggest, oldest rival, and
yeah,
get the job done, I've
yeah,
got a lot of respect for that.
yeah. So that does it. And I think the other one, for me, I think, well, I know you're probably got the kind of the, Emmanuel getting their draw against a Reeds team that, we've talked about a Reeds team going well, and Emmanuel fighting really hard there to get that draw. But I guess the standout for me, we've talked a little bit about, you don't or shouldn't have to win to be in our top five. And Radley College, we've said heaped praise on them for, taking on Kirkham Grammar and lost that game, but lost 22-13. Now, we don't know when there, but again, rain may have impacted, in terms of rain helps conditions. But, we still, as you said, Clifton, who I actually am starting to think might be the best team in the country now this year.
It's looking that way. Isn't it?
Yeah. Still managed to get a pretty convincing victory against what is a decent Sherborne side. So, Radley more than holding their own against Kirkham Grammar. It's not a kind of shock the world day, but it's a kind of, for me, that's kind of right. Radley are there and should be, and you'd hope now to see Radley kind of wanting to take on. Like, it'd be lovely to see. I know, like, them play a block against Wellington, who are close, and then take on more scores like this in the future.
It's a result, isn't it, where you would, if you were their coach, you'd be chatting to the boys afterwards and going, don't go home tonight downbeat about that. That's a top effort against one of the top 5-6 teams in the country. No, I know we all probably gave you a shot in training saying you'll probably be able to win this, blah blah blah. But the reality is, no one was expecting you to, and you've come out and you've given it a hell of a go, and that's all anyone can ask of you. And that, I would imagine, that'd be the message going to them: is that's a serious shift, lads.
Yeah, no, look, and they would have got that, and it's and it was, I kind of missed these when I was away. Yeah, they're kind of the easiest team talks in the world. When no one expects you to win, they're great.
Yeah.
And I'm, again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to my time at Caterham, but we got to do that. We got to be underdogs a lot. We didn't get that a lot at Wellington, because people expect, rightly, with the resources you've got, people rightly expect a lot of Wellington and Millfield and Sedbergh and all that again. And that's why, when Denstone have gone to Buscombe, we're heaping praise on them. I also, I think Sedbergh will come firing out this weekend, and I wouldn't fancy being Warwick, preparing for that.
Warwick are going to have to be on it.
But I know, but again, Tom's a great coach at Warwick, and I know he'll be doing everything to prepare, and he'll be trying to learn from what Denstone have done. So, they're far from, and they will, and they want to, they might spy an opportunity as well. But it's almost like, we talked about it, that kind of, when a big team loses, that next week is that training's probably got an extra bite to it. Not of anything that coaches will need to do, just bribe the boys.
Just the lads.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Right, here's what we're going to do on this top five.
On you go. Sorry, I've drifted off.
Well, no, because there's four there that I think all are worthy of one. So what we're going to do?
Yeah.
You get one, I get one.
Okay.
That's what we're going to do. You can go first.
Okay. Do you know? So I'm kind of torn between. I'm going to go in my heart. There's a little bit. I huge respect for the George Watson's win, and there's a little bit of, like, I'm trying to think of, not that it's a win, but I think Radley, for me, just in terms of that, they took that fixture on. They've done really well. Let's give them the praise that they deserve for that. So sorry, George Watson's, who probably, but it's
You never know. I might pick them. You never know. No, sorry, lads. I'm not. That was outstanding, but I'm going to go with. I'm not going to go with RGS Worcester, despite the fact that I was there and it was an incredible performance. It was a game that could have gone either way. and that is a uniquely pressurised schoolboy rugby situation, and for both sides to actually just perform at a pretty good level and compete so hard against each other is really impressive. But I don't actually think that they need me heaping praise on them to help them feel pretty good about that. I think they feel plenty good enough as it is. So I'm going to go with RGS Guildford. Probably expected them actually to edge it against Cranley, but that's kind of why I'm putting them in, because I don't think RGS Guildford, certainly not in the last 5, 6, 7 years, will have played against a side of the sort of historical schoolboy level of a Cranley and gone to it with outsiders expecting them to win. So that's a very different way to be turning up to these games, and they've come through it, and that's now Epsom College and Cranley, neither of whom are having their best seasons, admittedly, but they are huge sort of scalps for RGS Guildford to have. And for what that'll do, not just for that group of players, but for the groups of players below them in the years coming through, who will be going, that's doable. And that's a massive thing. So I'm going to go with them, which leaves us with Denstone College, Eastbourne College, Skinners, Radley College, and RGS Guildford as our top 5 school teams of the week. George Watson's College and RGS Worcester with some pretty massive honourable mentions, along with plenty of other teams. I mean, there are some serious results, some serious performances right across the board. 2 really high-scoring draws, Dulwich against John Fisher and Reeds against Emmanuel. Really cool to see. But that is our top 5. I'm just going to rattle through what's coming up. We're not going to get into it too much, other than to say, of course, we've got that live stream on Wednesday, and then on Friday night, we are off to Merchant Taylors for the end of rugby week against Reading Bluecoat. That follows after Wednesday's Schools Cup game again, between Oakham and Stowe. So do join us for both of those. And then on Saturday, I mean, as always, every Saturday, there are hundreds and hundreds of games going on, and we could pick through every single one. I mean, I've just in our notes listed about 30. We're not going to get through those, but there's just a couple I particularly want to pick out. And they feature certainly 2 of those sides that we've flagged as being sort of top 2, 3 in the country against 2 sides that are probably top 5, 6, 7 in the country. Clifton College against Wellington College and Trinity against Hampton. I'll start with Clifton College against Wellington College, and I'm going to start with a year ago that weekend.
Thanks, appreciate that.
I'm going to start there because what a game that was, what a dramatic finish that was, but it shows you the level that we're talking about, because that was undeniably a great game of schoolboy rugby. 2 schools that were among the best in the country, and they go at it again this weekend.
I guess for those aren't aware, so last year was at Wellington. Clifton came down, great game, and Sam Worsley now full time with Bristol, pretty close to last play. Actually, there was a little bit of play after it, a minute or so, kicked a drop goal to win it 22-21, which was, I think, their first win away there, and was actually my first loss at home in my time at Wellington College. So it stung. Not it did that wasn't what it was about. But it was an incredible game, and a game that none of the probably 38 boys involved in it, if not more, deserved to lose. It's one where I've just said I think Clifton are the best side in the country. But Wellington will go down there again. There's a lot of boys will be involved who were involved last year, and they know how much that hurt to lose at home, and they'll be pretty keen to inflict that back on Clifton. And let's not be like Wellington have got the firepower to do that. I think, again, you could accuse me a bit of bias here. I actually think Wellington might have the best midfield in the country this year. I think Rory Taylor, who's Rory Taylor at 10, Harrison Hall, Lloyd McEwen-Peters. There may be individual. I know people like Isaac Campbell will always stand that.
Combination's incredible.
That's an incredible group, and hopefully they're all playing this weekend. I hope they are. I know there's been a bit of stuff around academy availability and blocks and EAPs and stuff like that. So hopefully those three get to all play together. I'm not going to don't want to wade into that. I'm not missing those conversations, but it's, and then Clifton will be looking to, I'm sure Clifton have earmarked this as one of their big, Clifton aren't playing in the Cup. Clifton didn't play at St. Joe's. They will be earmarking probably, they want to come out on top of, be it that merit table that I've made my feelings clear on, or your guys' new system, and this, a win in this game would go a long way towards both of those probably. Yeah. So it's, they will have targeted it. They probably would have wanted to get everybody ready. They'll, they both would have had the chance to look at each other via some footage. So now you're kind of getting at that, okay, what teams are going to look like? Are you going to bring something new? Are you going to change things up? It's a really fascinating clash for me. I don't think, like, Clifton will not have that game all their own way at all. And I think it's a one-score game. I think Clifton go in as one-score favourites, just based on and again, I am biased here, so I really hope Wellington go down and get a win. I'll admit that I haven't got anything against Clifton College. I've obviously just got ties. It's just normal. Yeah, it's perfectly normal. I've just got ties. I know a lot of those Wellington College boys. I know the staff, and so I've got a personal tie to it. And I hope they can. But analytically, you probably put Clifton just ahead. But Wellington, you write Wellington off at your peril, I think, in that way.
I mean, this is a game that is very, very finely balanced. It's interesting, actually. So with it will come out officially tomorrow, but in the latest iteration of our table with Sedbergh going down to Denstone College and Clifton College going so well against Sherburn, it's Clifton that have actually gone to the top of our table now. So there's a bit of something for them there, but they'll need to be at their best to get past Wellington College. Wellington College, that's a group of boys that know big games. They've played in big games over and over. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. I mean, I'm with you. I really think it can go either way. Yes, Clifton are just favourites. That can go either way. Particularly if that midfield combination goes well for Wellington College, you're in for something. Clifton College pack is tough to deal with. That's but we'll see how it takes out.
And weather might play a part again. So I know Wellington will be praying for dry weather. They'll probably want to move it a bit more. Clifton will probably take a slightly windy, rainy day because again, they've said that power up front. Led by Louis Trevor is pretty phenomenal. And you've got a match again, that midfield needs the ball. And again, you've got threats outside it. So it's an interesting one, and again, we might have accidentally just wang Clifton. I might just wang Clifton up there by doing that. So it's, let's see, but a great game. I think probably the really big one, isn't it? Is that Trinity Hampton.
That's massive, isn't it? I mean, particularly, I think how Hampton fare on Wednesday against Harrow may have an impact. And actually just the sheer impact of having to play two such massive games, 4 days apart, could have an impact. On the other hand, if they get a positive result on Wednesday and come through with bodies in one piece, the confidence that they would have heading into that game against Trinity would be massive. So it's one that's pretty finely balanced again. I mean, Trinity, I think, are looking incredible, but Hampton have not put a foot wrong all season and will be one of the few sides in the country that will go to Trinity thinking, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do well here.
Yeah, and look, it's hampered by having to go, I think if Hampton didn't have to play Harrow, almost, again, I think you're right, what happens on Wednesday will obviously impact it in terms of bodies and scoreline, in terms of your emotional energy. It's a shame it's got that before, or because Trinity, obviously, because of what happened, with the kind of, who are they playing, they don't, both teams potentially were due to have it, and it's one kind of you just hope goes ahead. Again, and I'm not saying I wouldn't understand if Hampton come out on top, they might say, well, do you know what, boys, we might see you in a couple of weeks' time anyway, so we can push it. And again, which other teams will have something to say about, but there's that. Or again, in terms of bodies and stuff like that, and wanting good games. So you just hope it goes ahead, because as you said, that could be, Hampton won't be, from the season they've had. They've got nothing to be scared of playing anybody. So no, that's a great game.
That's amazing, man.
The kind of Abingdon derbies are like a really.
I love that game.
Yeah,
I love that game. They're so close to each other as well. It's really. I've turned into the wrong car park before. I really like that one. It's one, as we spoke about Radley earlier. They're a great performance against Kirkham Grammar School. Back it up now against one of your closest rivals. Abingdon will be absolutely gunning for it. That'll be a cracker. There's so many. I mean, we've spoken about that Warwick Sedbergh game as well, haven't we? Sedbergh are going to be gunning for it. But Warwick know what's coming, and Warwick put in a belter of a performance. Who did they play at the weekend? Bedford. 21-7. Bedford were unbeaten going into that. So Warwick could be feeling pretty good about themselves.
Yeah.
They're going to need to be at their best. But there's loads and loads of great fixtures. I mean, we're not going to get into all these because we just can't spare the time, but I'm just going to sort of rifle through some of these ones that just stand out to me. Bedford against Oakham, Berkhamsted, Northampton School for Boys, Millfield Channel College, Ollie Morgan going back to his old school to take on his old coach, John Mallett. I always love that. Bromsgrove Rugby, Barnard Castle, St Peters, St Paul's v Eton College for the second time this season. Can St Paul's get the result this time? Cranley Epsom College, those two teams that have had RGS Guildford get them. Which one's going to come out on top there? A good derby up in Yorkshire, Queggs Wakefield against Bradford Grammar. A great state school battle in East London, John Fisher against Campion. Brighton College against St John's Leatherhead, two sides that probably got stung a little bit at the weekend. How do they bounce back? Another great one up in the north, Woodhouse Grove against Durham. Got that classic fixture, which I think is unlikely to be the best game this year. But Whitgift against Dulwich College, that 9 years out of 10, that's an absolute belter of a fixture. Yeah. Similarly, Harrow against Tunbridge, and also, Harrow got that big game in midweek. Tunbridge might just be thinking, hey, we've got a chance there. Got a chance to just a little bit. Yeah,
it's an interesting one for Tunbridge, and again, well coached by Reece Crane. Like he'll, again, it's at Harrow, which is again will help give those Harrow boys a bit of an emotional lift. But so again, I think if it was at Tunbridge, depending on how on the Wednesday went, you go, do you know what? That could be again, I'll use kind of American football coverage like upset alert or kind of trap games to use that. Yeah. That is a trap game for Harrow there, and it's
and Tunbridge have got a bit of momentum now. When they went down to the Judd early in the season, it was a bit like, maybe it's not the best Tunbridge side this year. A bit of a shame. I think the lesson that we can learn from that is that in fact it's just an unbelievably good Judd side. Tunbridge have actually been going pretty well since then. So that'd be an interesting one. And then another fixture that I always quite like. It's quite a sort of classic fixture. Marlborough College against Sherborne. So there's all sorts of great games going on. I mean, there are those two that really stand out as just super competitive games. It'd be amazing to see how they shake out. But
those two and the Wednesday games, I think, are probably the highlights of. But there's It's just nice to be back in full flow and talk.
Well, exactly. It's good to be back. And hey, guess what? Because all of those are taking place on Saturday, you can all tune into the Scotland game on Sunday against the All Blacks. How about that? That'll be a nice, depressing afternoon for me. Greatest schools 15 of the decade. It's the final position.
Fullback. Yeah, mate.
And it's hotly contested. Really hotly contested. There are some unbelievable options. When I was going through this, I was going, these are ridiculous names. And I almost needed to check my own biases as I was going through it and you can see the sort of long list of names that I put together here. And on that long list, I had 3 Sedbergh fullbacks, 3 Millfield fullbacks, 2 Wellington College fullbacks, and lots of people from other schools. And the question I wanted to ask you on it is, obviously through this last kind of decade, those 3 schools have been pretty dominant in all forms of the game. And is there something about the fullback position that means players from those schools stand out? Does the fact that there's a lot of space in the backfield, and so perhaps if you have a player who is pretty decent in that position, they shine because of the space they've got to operate in, or is it just a coincidence? Yeah, you'll know better than me. Is there what's?
Yeah, I think, look, yeah. Again, you say that a forward coach would know better. I'm not sure that's, there'll be I certainly backs coach I've worked with would absolutely laugh at the fact that I might know something about fullback play there. But it's I think so. My 2 pence would be there is something about being on the front foot, yeah. And again, those sides get on the front foot a lot, or have done in the last 10 years. I think if you I think almost for me, I remember RJSI Wickham. We took, again, outside of our window, but if you go back probably into that decade before we've looked at, they were we probably would have had a few RJSI Wickham boys in this, like certainly Christian Wade, who's again lovely team carving up for us in Metro at the weekend again. But it's they used to really kind of 15 would kind of come and insert themselves into time. They were probably the best schoolboy teams at attacking that 13 channel, and that's where you see good fullbacks pop up a lot. It's kind of either kind of hitting those really hard lines, and a lot of these guys I know have played elsewhere, but you definitely, I think in order to shine you probably need to be in a team that's going pretty well. It's really hard, unless because you don't get many in the schoolboy game. Tends to be more about running, it tends to be more attacking position. In the adult game, your kicking game is massive. With the 50-22 schools, think a bit more about kicking, but also schools think a little bit more about backfield defence now as well. So it's less significant. And so, I certainly know when I was making my list, we're really talking about great run threats. And it's, so the first one I'll talk about then is a guy who's just getting into the Exeter Chiefs team on the wing now, although I still think he should play for is Dan John. Now Dan John played
amazing player.
Now actually didn't play all of his rugby at 15, but at school was fantastic, and again it's that kind of that step. He was elusive and he played in a side that went forward a lot. He played in a really good midfield side, behind a pack that I think would have had Ollie Burrows and Ewan Richards in it. Two guys who turned, and other guys were really good as well. So I
think they had Rhys Davis as well as at Cardiff, I think.
Exactly. And again, this isn't me now being Exeter Chiefs bias, but actually both their wingers at the weekend, another one would be Josh Hodge. And Josh Hodge at Sedbergh now played behind an incredible Sedbergh pack, and actually beyond that was just in an incredible Sedbergh back line.
Yeah, I mean he had the likes of Redpath and Curtis feeding him all this.
So it meant he got the opportunity, to kind of, you almost need a lot of the ball because generally, schools will look at it, well, 13s probably get more touches, then 11s, then 15s. That's really generic, like so it's, you do need a lot of the ball. So I think there's reason for that to go kind of outside of that, just so we're not only talking about a handful of scores. I think actually where we land will be outside of that. We'll go back to some of them though. To mention someone who was really good in ace, again, maybe me showing a little bit of Welsh bias here, but Matt Prothero was
his upper year was one of the most incredible single seasons I've seen from a player. He was unplayable at times. His highlights reel would have been ridiculous from that season because he was scoring sort of length of the field tries. His game wasn't perfect, but from a sort of highlights of your game theory, he was astonishing that year.
And again, in a pretty dominant Hartpury side. Again, so we are sort of there is a trend here. Hartpury pretty much in their pomp then, in terms of other race colleges struggling to get close to him, going off to the kind of world schools festivals and taking on the world's best and stuff like that. That's around that window, isn't it, for Hartpury? So
there's a lad I want to talk about as well from kind of similar era, who not a particularly heralded player. I don't think was part of any academy. I think took football more seriously than he did rugby. But it was a lad called Ali Needon who played fullback for Dulwich College in their sort of glory years in that sort of turn of the decade.
Really good player.
But that Dulwich era was really built around quite a pragmatic style of play. It was, 8 forwards who'd get you where you needed to be on the park, half-backs and a 12 that would steer the game, and you take your points. It was pretty pragmatic style of play, and hats off to them. It worked brilliantly. But Ali Needham was the exception to that. He was at fullback and just carving up, and I suppose a bit of what you say, he was on the front foot, so that space was there. But I remember just every time he played, I was going, this kid's incredible. I can't believe no one's taking him more seriously. And I remember back in those days, Samurai had their Samurai Bulldogs team, the kind of academy team that would go and play a bit of sevens on the circuit. And Sam Howard, who was the Dulwich College head coach at the time, was also doing the Samurai Bulldog stuff, and was like, Ali Needham's in my squad. I'm not, just because no one else is looking at him, I am not ignoring this kid. He was incredible. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it was a great. And again, it'd be interesting. I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's playing footy or not playing at all. But there's one. I guess a name we've talked about before, but it's I think somebody maybe shone in a team that wasn't always on the front foot would be who's again a professional winger now, would be Henry Arundel at Harrow. Played a lot of 15, and again that Harrow side wasn't the Harrow side of this year. And they weren't, don't get me wrong, they weren't bad, but they weren't, they probably weren't top 3 or 4 in the country at that point. So or that year. But Henry scored some incredible tries, and kind of probably, we talk a bit about what you do for your school. He made that side more competitive than it probably had a right to be in some really big games. So, and again, I mentioned it last week, but again, the personal bias is obviously part of this, because it's our opinion. But that scored an absolutely ridiculous try uphill at Wellington that stuck in my memory. But I'm sure you've got a few other guys to mention. I think
there's a guy I can't not talk about, because every time his name's on a piece of paper, I want to talk about him, which is Tom Whiteley at Millfield, who he's probably my favourite ever schoolboy player, because he's just electric, and he could do things that were absolutely incredible. And actually, one of the things that stood out for me most about him, and I'll never ever forget this, and it's on another guy who's on our kind of long list, but it was a defensive moment from him. Rossin Park Sevens, Sam Asplan-Robinson for Wellington College, who is a player for this discussion, who was an excellent fullback, and then had to move across the wing to accommodate another great fullback in the form of Tom Parton, who's definitely part of this discussion. But Sam Asplan-Robinson makes a break, and Tom Whiteley knows, I can't one-on-one, I've got a problem here. So he lets him go by so that he can scrag him from behind, ends up being able to bounce onto his feet, turn the ball over, go the length of the field. I think he gives the pass at the end for someone else to score. But I happened to be, where I was stood, I was kind of eyes on with his eyes. So you could kind of see the gears clicking through his head. And it was an amazing bit of just decision making, of understanding that body on body, he's losing that tackle. So actually, what's the best way I can make this tackle basically advantageous for me? And it was absolutely brilliant. But he'd probably be gutted that we're talking about his defence, because his attack was he was just an attacking freak. He's almost unlucky in this 15, in that he played a bit of 9, he played a bit of 10, he played a bit of 15. He
walks into the 23 shirt, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. He was just brilliant. And on a similar note, one of my other favourite players actually was Darren Atkins, who kind of was the reason that Whiteley ended up moving from fullback to 9, because Millfield had this kind of other generational fullback talent in the form of Darren Atkins, and Whiteley, being so adaptable, moved into the 9 shirt. So they've had some incredible players through the years.
Oh yeah, they are someone who, I guess, who obviously fits the window. Who people go, Freddie Stewart, because he's starting for England, Freddie Stewart was a very good player at Norwich School. But I think, and maybe this goes back to our point about a bit of big school bias. Who knows? Again, I don't know much about that Norwich side. what was around him, and I'm sure the coach will say, "Look, we'll be screaming like, how can you not have Freddie in there?" But there was just a bit around, we have, and maybe I think the person I'm going to land did do a bit more for their school, but I don't know about that. But maybe that's harshly done by. I don't feel like I saw a lot of Freddie Stewart. No, I remember him.
No, I think
and you might have seen more. So
there's a bit of that. I also think there's a bit of style of game that comes to it. Freddie's an unbelievable player, and he was an unbelievable school player. But he's a very, very solid fullback. He is the man that you would be so happy to have behind you because you know you're safe no matter what's coming. The guys probably that are more in the mix than him are guys where they don't necessarily have that skill. And actually in a professional game, that's a much more useful skill a lot of the time. But probably the guys that we're getting more excited about are the guys that got us up on our feet, who just did things that were just magical. And that's not Freddie's game. There's nothing wrong with that. My God, I mean, he's got what, 20 England caps, and he's only 20 or something.
Oh, look, he's world class, isn't he? Like he walks into probably any team in the world at the moment. But so I guess in my head, there's probably two people I would say that's that, and I think that's Tom Parton. I think it's Lewis Liner. It's and it's. Both played in great school teams, both having fantastic professional careers, which is irrelevant to what we're talking about. But it's nice that they've gone on to that. Actually, interesting. Do you lean towards Tom because actually Tom's stayed as a 15? Lewis seems to transition now to a winger. Wouldn't surprise me if he. I know. Again, had he been fit when Tyrone Green had gone down, it wouldn't have surprised me if they just shifted Lewis into 15. But that's coulda, woulda, shoulda, and that's a professional game and staying fit. I probably actually lean towards Liner in terms of, again, just personally. Probably in terms of our Hampton side he was in was good. Let's not, but in terms of probably surrounded by a little less quality than Tom, and again made took a Hampton team to not to places they've not been before because they won a Surrey Sevens title. I think they won the plate at St Joe's and stuff like that. And Hampton have done things like that, in teams that haven't got Liner in, but he was so stat, and he just, I think almost I saw more of him at sevens. And it felt, we've talked about almost a professional someone playing a level below themselves. He had so much time, he knew what was coming. He felt so ready to transition, pro game ready if you want. That I think Lewis gets it for me, but I know that people again I didn't see a lot of. I wasn't at Wellington when Tom was there, but I know people who were coaching would have said Tom was absolutely standout, kind of one of the best schoolboys they've ever seen. So there's a good case.
Tom was sensational, and I would actually say that the fullback position is second only really to the back row in terms of the breadth of available options to us here. What direction we could go. I mean, I could make a case for Tom Parton. I could make a case for any one of Dan John, Darren Atkins, Tom Whiteley. I could make a case for Josh Hodge. I could make a case for Matt Prothero. I could even try and argue a case for an Ali Needon or someone like that.
Yeah. Ali Crossdale.
Ali Crossdale, yeah. Jeez, God, what a player.
He was so good. Played a lot at 10. Played a lot at 10%, but played a lot at 10.
I mean, Nick David, guys like that. There are some unbelievable players, but Lewis Liner, there was a particular buzz about him, and it wasn't just because he had his dad's name. It was because he was playing really unbelievable rugby. Hampton had had a couple of years before him where they were on the up, and Lewis's arrival into that first team stop that being what can sometimes be a thing when a school gets on the up, which is that it's an up and then it's a down on the other side, and it just
Yeah.
became a vertical climb because Lewis just bred confidence in everyone around him, and it gave the coaching staff something that they could build a team around. You know, and a culture that they could develop off the back of him, and he was incredible. I kept watching him, thinking, oh, he's probably going to be he's going to, looking out for things that were what his dad did, because that's what you go into these things thinking. And he
not a lot.
What he was doing was going out and doing things his dad could never do. And you suddenly realise, oh no, I'm not thinking this guy's good because of who his dad is. I'm thinking this guy's good because of what he can do, because what he was doing was so different to what you were expecting. And it was incredible. And he took them to some amazing places as a team. So I think that's us confirmed. Lewis, fullback.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's again, as well as I think it's just to finish. I remember in a sevens game, two things about he scored an incredible try, sort of in a sevens game against Wellington College, in a game where actually two of the players, so him and Cassius Cleves, so Cass was a fifth former at the time, playing at Cass actually scored a great try in that game, and then Lewis scored them back to kind of win them the game. But it was also after it, I remember going over and shaking the Hampton boys' hands, and like to a man, they were all lovely. What you could see is, everyone knew Lewis was turning pro, and but he wasn't out the door at all. He was like playing for Hampton meant a huge amount, and I think that's probably true of all of our team as we round it off. Is that, look, you can make a case for other people in the positions, of course you can, but and a lot of these players have gone on or are going on to have fantastic professional careers. It was great. We talked about Ibatoye, like great to see him back, in a Bristol shirt last weekend, doing really well. So it's kind of, but playing for their school meant a huge amount to them, and they dragged their school, groups along with them, and that's really stand out. And of course, others have done that. We're not saying they're the only 15 kids who've done that for a school ever. But kind of, and a lot of the players we've talked about actually have done that, and that's one of the really special bits of schoolboy rugby, is how sometimes an individual can galvanise others, players who may not play beyond school, and that's really exciting. Like that's really cool actually, because you create these memories together, and I think Lewis is a really fitting 15 to what is a side I'd like to see play.
Oh, I'd love to see that. If we could get a Barbarian squad together that's this team, I'd absolutely love it. So that is our 15. It'll be out on social media for you in the coming days. 16 players, because we bottled it on choosing between the colours. 16 players, 14 different schools, but let's call it 15 players, 14 different schools. That's pretty cool. We weren't even thinking really about what school people were coming.
Is it 14 different schools?
14 different schools. We didn't. Yeah, it wasn't a thing we were considering. And it's only your bias that's meant that it's not 15 different schools.
Oh no, that's too well.
Deary me. But I'll tell you what's also interesting.
You can all just blame me for that. That's all.
What's also interesting is we don't have, for a side who've won pretty much everything through this period, we don't have a Millfield player in the team, which surprises me, because there's about 3 or 4 Millfield lads that I would have fought hard for. But it just shows that we've pushed each other on this, and we've got the team together.
Yeah, so, and I feel I hadn't realised that about Millfield, and because it feels like in every position we've talked about.
They've had a contender in every position. I think if we were to pick a bench, you'd probably find that there were like 4 or 5 Millfield players on it.
Or arguably you could pick a kind of best OM side. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It, and
the trouble they've had is, if you look at some of the positions where they've missed out,
we've talked about 3 of their players today.
Exactly. You've got 3 Millfield fullbacks. It's just that all 3 of them are probably your next cab off the rank on this. It just shows you, though, the competition in school rugby is massive, and the spread of talent is always far wider than everyone thinks.
That is cool that it's 14 schools, and sorry for my bias, but yeah.
I mean, you can't argue too much with Finn Baxter and Cassius Cleves, though.
I would hope not.
I would have called you out on that if I thought it was wrong. So I think we won't get too many complaints about that.
Yeah.
And there's 2 Oundle players as well. Let's not forget that, Ben and Tom Curry, both sharing a half each on the blindside flank. So Oundle doing all right out of it as well. But that's it for this week. We'll be back next week with we've already trailed what's to come over the course of the next 7 days. So we'll have a hell of a lot to get through next week. It's going to be good fun. Please do give us a like, a subscribe, a comment, all of that kind of stuff. It helps loads. I'm told a rating apparently is very useful as well. Acast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. I guess if you're watching or listening to this, you already know that, but I've still got to say it. And then get in touch on social media on @NextGen15, @NextGenXV. I'd like to hear from the listeners. Do they want us to pick a bench? And also, do they want us to pick a coach to coach this team? Because that could be very interesting, because there have been some legends of the game, and I'd really like to talk about them.
That'd be cool.
Choosing between them, but it'd be nice to talk about a few of them, because they tend to lurk in the background quite rightly, but it'd be nice to give a few of them a shout out. Dan, thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of the day, and we will catch all of you next time. Thank you very much for listening.